Greetings, everybody. My name is James. I am from the internet, and today we are going to be talking about perspective. Now, over the last few months, I have been going extra hard on all things labor. Votes for workplaces to unionize, large labor strikes all over the country, and of course, the overall burgeoning awakening of the working class, coming to realize for the first time in decades that their labor is worth far more than they have been willing or able to ask for, let alone demand. Now, of course, as somebody who spent most of their life working shitty jobs for an hourly wage, I tend to view things from the perspective of the working class. They are my people. I am amongst my folk because I work a shit ton and I have no capital. So working class it is for me, and that is the perspective I tend to bring to stories. In fact, it would be accurate to say that at times I tend to look at things from a very narrow, closed-in perspective as a member of the working class for what it means to the working class on a whole when I discuss one of these stories. So, what I thought I would do today is to update you on some of the labor numbers out there for our awesome, U.S. American workforce that just loves selling their labor for pennies on the dollar. And then, rather than just discussing numbers, I wanted to take a look at an individual story to show you how and why this sort of thing continues to happen and, frankly, needs to happen. All right, let's buckle up, kids. Here we go. A record number of Americans quit their jobs in September. Well, I'll be damned. I feel like it was just last month that we were discussing how more people had quit their jobs in a 1-month period than at any time previously in the history of American labor. And lo and behold, it took us exactly 1 month to break that record that had previously stood for many a decade. I wonder, could these be continuing trends from last month? Let's find out. A record 4.4 million Americans quit their jobs in September as the sheer volume of available jobs is empowering workers to have their pick. Workers are quitting in search for better pay or better jobs, representing a fundamental shift in America's labor market. Quote, labor now has the initiative, and the era of paying individuals less than a livable wage has ended. This strongly suggests that rising wages are going to be part and parcel of the economic landscape going forward. Well, I'll be damned. It turns out that having so many job openings and so many people furloughed on the sidelines for so long made even more job openings, to the point where laborers now have the ability to pick and choose where they work. No longer do they just have to settle for the shittiest job closest to their house, because now they can go walk 0.2 of a mile down the road and find a similar job to the job they have at a different business that pays substantially more. And the further up the labor food chain you go, the more aggressive this is becoming. More often than not, I tend to speak of these things from the perspective of somebody making the lowest possible hourly wage in fast food, leisure, or retail, because these are the people who make the least, they work the hardest, and they have to deal with the most people. But let me tell you, the further up the food chain you go, once you get into, quote, middle management and top-end blue-collar into white-collar jobs, companies out there are literally paying other people's employees big, huge bonuses to poach them from their jobs to come work at their job. So this guy might be onto something. The nation had 10.4 million jobs open in September as the worker shortage crisis continued. Statistics show it was a modest decrease from the 10.6 million open jobs back in August. Jobs particularly increased in the healthcare sector and in state and local government. So it looks like all that bullshit after the primary labor numbers were released last week about how unemployment is plummeting and America is getting back to work, mostly because low-paid workers who were trying to find better jobs ran out of free money from the government and were forced to go back to work. Does anybody remember that prevailing argument? It was literally only a fucking week ago, and just about everybody to the right of Jimmy Carter has been parroting it ever since. But it turns out that was complete bullshit. No, rather, people are quitting their jobs to go take better jobs. Why? Because the joyous free market. And now that labor is an in-demand resource, well, there are certain people in the free market who are willing to pay a lot more for the same labor or service than they were just paying a year or two ago. Sorry, unemployment isn't dropping. People are just leaving their shitty jobs for slightly less shitty jobs. Quote, the pace of people quitting across the labor market is remarkable, but the concentration among a few sectors is eye-popping. Quits are up the most in sectors where most work is in-person or relatively low-paying. You know, all the jobs we have been talking about ad nauseum for months that people are no longer willing to do for shit wages. That's right, that's just how the free market works now. If you have one of the shittiest jobs out there, and by shittiest jobs, I mean A, manual labor, B, dealing with the general public, and C, having to take everybody's bullshit, well then, you are now going to have to pay considerable amount more, if not a premium, to get enough people to fully staff out your business. Sorry, that's just the free market. Employers hired 6.5 million people in September, while separations, which include voluntary quits, stood at 6.2 million. Compared with the huge number of jobs available, this underscores America's worker shortage problem. During the pandemic, millions of workers have dropped out of the labor force. For some, care responsibilities at home prevent them from going back to work, while for others, the risk of contracting the virus itself is still too high. These factors particularly affected women. As of October, the number of women not in the labor force was nearly 3 million people higher than before COVID. In fact, the combination of shitty jobs that nobody wants to work, plus millions of people retiring, plus close to 1 million people dying, plus millions of women staying home to take care of their families, has led us to the point where many states are now starting to loudly grumble and want to push back child labor laws so that 14 and 15-year-olds can work more hours per week and longer shifts. You know, rather than just increasing wages or, I don't know, letting some of those people who supposedly we don't allow to work here because supposedly they are illegal. Yeah, I don't know. We seem to have such large holes in our workforce if we want our economy to go back to the speed, velocity, and size, which it currently held before COVID. Well then, it seems that just maybe you're going to have to let some of those people have a job too. And now that we've gone through all these numbers, I want to bring you the perspective portion of the show, because this, on a macro level, is great. And again, we've done a bunch of videos, we've covered a whole bunch of these numbers. Yes, inflation is up roughly 6%, and yes, average wages are currently up roughly 6%, and it's a wash. However, people in retail, fast food, fast casual, they've seen their wages go up almost 17% in the last year, thus are in a far better position than they were before COVID. And it's okay to talk about all of these things going on in large market numbers of millions of people and billions of dollars and trillions of lost equity and whatever else we're talking about on the macro scale. But again, whenever we discuss something in the macro, that macro is merely made up of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of individuals. And each of them have a different story and a different relationship to money, to labor, and to capital. So, rather than just take this as a W and do a little victory lap, I want to show you why so many people have to constantly look for a better job and more money now that the opportunity is currently out there. When a Hyundai is also the family home. Yes, this one's going to be a shocker for y'all. While wages are going up and the demand for labor increases, it doesn't mean that that instantly makes things rosy and awesome for every member of the working class. In fact, there are more people struggling now than ever before, even with these small gains. Some families sacrifice nearly everything so that their kids can go to the right schools. In eastern Pennsylvania, Veronica Vargas and her longtime partner Alex put their sons to bed most nights in their car in the Walmart parking lot where they work. They're doing it to keep their 11, 13, and 14-year-old boys in a sought-after public school district that's nearby. But it's in an area where affordable rentals can be hard to get. So the family's Hyundai Santa Fe has become a bedroom, living room, and kitchen for 5 people. Quote, "I've lost like 20 pounds, Vargas said. I don't eat because of the stress. Also because, food's expensive. In fact, everything is expensive. And as I've said many times before, and I will continue to repeat, there is nothing more expensive than being poor, because every last cost instantly drains your savings. There is no volume discount. There is no good customer discount. There is no good credit discount. Everything costs more when you're poor. So yeah, of course, the working class needs to continue demanding better wages and better working conditions because their living conditions quite literally are shit. When the family is not at school or work, they spend most of their time in a local park. They were living in Florida when the pandemic began, but Vargas lost her job as a Spanish language interpreter, and Alex lost his telemarketing job. They were out of work for a while, and it took a toll on their finances. They ran through over $20,000 in savings and eventually lost the home they rented. Vargas and Alex moved north and now work full-time at a Walmart in the Allentown region of Pennsylvania. They relocated their family in order to work the overnight shift at the store because they now earn more than $18 an hour. For the record, I would like the bootstrap crowd to pay particular attention to these paragraphs in this article because A, they were both working full-time. B, they had over $20,000 in savings. Saving up to try to buy a house. So it's not like they were welfare queens and sitting on their ass. Then the pandemic came and they went broke because, they're fucking lazy. They literally worked hard enough to pay for 3 children's lives, their lives, the rent for all 5 of them, and save $20,000 before fucking disaster struck. And once again, the other part of this reminder is that you are always a lot closer to being poor than you are to being wealthy, no matter how much money you have. And all it takes is one bad thing to drain your savings. And then you and your family are living in a car in a Walmart parking lot. But hey, at least Walmart's paying $18 an hour. That's what we're celebrating, right? It's almost as if good gains are great overall, but somehow don't always instantly uplift every individual within the large mass of the working class, which is why we all need to keep pushing harder. Combined, Vargas and Alex make more than the median household income in the U.S., which is around $67,000 a year. So they don't qualify for government aid programs. But living unhoused is expensive for a family of 5. They fill their car up with gasoline every day since they keep it running all night so their children stay warm, i.e. don't freeze to death in Pennsylvania in the middle of the night as winter approaches. And of course, on top of that, there's a car payment, occasional hotel stays, storage unit fees, $13 truck stop showers, and even frequent trips to the laundromat so they can get wrinkles out of the boys' school clothes. And so again, it's great to say that 2 people earn $70,000 a year, and that is a good salary, even better than the average. But that's totally different from saying, hey, if you want to have housing in the United States of America, you have to be able to plunk down $4,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 just to put down all your deposits, walk in the door, get all your utilities turned on. Of course, that is after you pay a $100 to $200 non-refundable background check and credit check. You see, it's getting tougher and tougher to find housing out there if you rent, because landlords want to charge as much as possible. Ergo, affordable housing is very difficult to find, and what literal affordable housing there is being bought up by large companies like Blackstone and other hedge funds, and then being flipped into expensive rentals because they know people will pay more to live in a good school district so that their kids can get a chance to go to college and have a better life than they did while working at a Walmart and living in a fucking car. So what does this mean for you, the average viewer at home, the fellow member of the working class? Well, it means that wages are continuing to increase because market demand is making labor more expensive. And so if you're a laborer, that is an overall good sign. However, the very same capitalists who have been pillaging the working class through low salaries and forced increased work productivity are now the very same people who are investing in the hedge funds that are buying up all the houses so that they become expensive rentals. Because if the wealthy can't fuck you one direction, they're going to find a different direction from which to fuck you. So everybody, do not take these small gains as large wins. Take them as small W's on the way to someplace far better. Do not take your foot off the fucking gas. Just because strikes are being ended and individual workplaces are being forced to pay their employees more, it does not mean that is an end. This is just the beginning. The cold weather is coming. The expensive season is coming. The home heating oil season is coming. And more people are going to fall through the cracks unless we all collectively demand better, not just for ourselves, but for each other. Until next time, my name is James. I am from the internet, and I am out. Peace.